Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Behind the Closed Doors. Episode 9. Chapter 75. Crystal POV. Zanian, what are you doing? I asked as soon as I walked into the kitchen. He turned around and smiled at me guiltily and held up his hands. I gasped and said, "No, you didn't." I walked closer to him and he ran the other way. "See, let's be rational about this, we don't want to start something," Zanian said and moved to the other side of the counter. "You took the last one and you didn't even share," I said, looking at him and the tub of chocolate mousse in his hand. "I didn't know you would want," he said, trying to defend himself. I crossed my arms over my chest, giving him a "Are you serious?" look. I was still standing waiting for him to say something when I felt a tug in my mind. I opened my link and then I heard Julian's voice. "Trouble, need help?" That was all it took and my body stiffened. "Follow the link you are feeling." I concentrated on the link and a menacing growl escaped my lips. I looked at Zanian and he was already walking closer to me. "What's going on?" he asked with concern in his eyes. "Julian's in trouble," I said and started towards the door. "Where are you going?" Zanian called behind me. "To find him and kill whomever dared to touch him," I said, possessiveness seeping through every word. I even shocked myself at how possessive I sound. "I'm coming with you," Zanian said and was already undressing to shift. There is no use in me trying to keep him here, so I sighed and walked up to Derek. "You're in charge, we'll be back," I said and shifted, running towards the woods. I stood still for a minute until I could feel the pull and took off running with Zanian right behind me. He started to accept his position and his responsibilities, and in return his wolf is getting stronger and faster. "Do you even know where you are going?" Zanian asked through Mind Link. "Yes, I can feel him," I said and ran faster. "Julian POV, why are you so calm?" my mother asked, swallowing hard enough for me to hear. Judging by her fear, she may have an idea of what I did or she doesn't. I shrugged my shoulders and looked at her. "Why does my silence scare you?" I asked, smiling sarcastically. She took a step towards the bars and looked at me. "What happened to you?" she asked. I looked at her and said, "Oh dear mother, has time erased your memory?" I pushed away from the wall and stood up, walking closer to her. "I thought you were dead," my mother said, lowering her voice. "I was for 3 days," I said and saw her looking at me confused. "Why didn't you ever come home?" she asked, her voice laced with sadness. "Because I have a reputation, remember? You banned me," I said, trying to figure out if she is for real or if she really can't remember. "I never banished you, I just chased you out," she said defensively, crossing her arms and glaring at me. "It comes down to the same thing. You knew what he was doing and what he turned me into, yet you never even once told me the truth, and I had to find all that out for myself, and when I lost my temper you threw me out," I said, grabbing the bars, looking at her. "You almost killed your father, Julian, so I threw you out to save your life," my mother said, looking at me. For the first time I am really confused. "What is that supposed to mean?" I asked. She gave a loud sigh and turned her back to me. "Your father was cursed, he stole from the wrong clan and a hag cursed him. If you killed him that day the curse would have been transferred to you because you share the same blood, so yes, I threw you out, and yes, your father died, but that was all his own doing." I stared at her in disbelief and just shook my head. "Then why am I here now?" I asked, feeling slightly annoyed. "Because you did mate with another species and therefore the king has sent for you," my mother said, and I narrowed my eyes. "How did he find out?" I asked, crossing my arms. My mother looked at me and gave me a sad smile. Lara made contact and our conversation was overheard. Neither of us knew. My mother said. I stood staring at her when I felt a warmth spread over my body and I smiled. I looked at my mother and said, I suggest you come in, as it would be the safest place for you to be. I watched as her eyes went wide and just then she heard the growl. She looked at me and fumbled for the keys, and the minute she opened the door I used my vampire speed and pushed her in, slamming the door shut, with her on the inside and me on the outside. We heard multiple growls and howls. I walked to the door and it's locked. I took a whiff of the air and decided to just stand back. I moved just in time and the door came flying past me. I visibly stiffened at the beautiful beast in front of me. I knew it was Crystal from her smell, but she changed. She is a mixture of white and purple that infuses like one big spiral. She has the mark of the Vulpes family on her forehead, which is a pitch black diamond with a white V. Her eyes are golden and purple, and the way I could get lost in them. I smiled and looked over to the cage where my mother was cowering in fear, hugging the wall like she wishes it could swallow her up. Crystal left me and walked closer to the gate. Before she could pounce I laid my hand on her back and stroked her fur, causing her to shiver and look at me. So beautiful, I said, and stood back so that she could shift. And just then Zanian barged in looking like he hasn't bathed in years. He is covered in blood and mud and leaves. I couldn't help it, I just had to laugh. You have got to be kidding me, I said and looked at him. He looked at me and said, next time a little more warning. I laughed and said, you need a bath. Crystal shifted and literally jumped into my arms, not even waiting before she crushed her lips to mine. I hugged her close to me, not even caring that my mother is glaring at us. Zanian cleared his throat and put his hand on my shoulder. There will be plenty of time, but we have to go, he said and picked Crystal off me. I turned to my mother and said, Mother, I would like for you to meet my mate, Crystal. This is my mother. She swallowed hard because of the look Crystal gave her and eventually just said, nice to meet you. Crystal looked between me and her and said, I thought you said that you are in trouble, she said, crossing her arms. I am, because the king knows of our mating and a certain witch trapped me, I said and stared at my mother. How did Helena end up part of all this? I asked. She is the king's personal lapdog, my mother said and scoffed. I nodded my head and looked at her. Why are you here then? I asked. She looked at Crystal and then me. When Lara phoned and told me about your mate, I wanted to see for myself, and now that I have, well, I don't want anything to do with the mess that it will cause. The Vulpes family is the only family every supernatural creature with a brain fears, and for good reason, my mother said and stared at Crystal. Yes, well, that is why we come back every few hundred years, because the incompetence of the royals is an insult to our name, Crystal said, looking at my mother taking a step forward. She opened the gate and said, you will deliver a message, tell then a Vulpes sits on the throne once more and change is coming. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought Crystal wouldn't know anything about her past or heritage, and yet here she is talking as if she had known all along. Crystal stepped back, allowing my mother out. She looked at me and smiled sadly. We'll meet again one day, she said, and she left. Crystal clapped her hands together and looked at me. Let's go home, she said and took my hand. What just happened? Zanian asked, stepping forward. And what is a Vulpes? I will explain everything at home, Crystal said and smiled at him softly. Crystal POV, it feels good to know my name can put fear into people. I didn't even know about all this until a day ago. Yes, I opened the book, but when I did, something weird happened. It was like I was reliving the past. I could see everything happening around me, yet I wasn't really there. I even saw my mother in her prime years and learned that a fox has a very long lifespan. For instance, my mother was just over 500 years old. And I also found out that each tale gives you a lifespan of 500 years if you haven't found your mate, and if you found your mate your lifespan extends to one of them dies. I learned everything. My great-grandfather Marcus Vulpes was the very first and true king of the kingdoms, no one was above him except for the moon goddess herself. And now I will hold the throne once more. My life finally makes sense and I know my history, I know where I come from. After we got to Julian, I must say I was expecting more of a challenge because if they can capture a vampire king they must be strong, but when we got here I was disappointed. Not even the door was a challenge for me. On our way home I kept looking at Zanian, who is looking at me with narrowed eyes. I sighed and said, "What is it?" I looked at Zanian waiting. "How come I don't know what you were talking about?" he asked, and I could feel the sadness he tries to hide. "I will explain everything at home," I said and looked away. I hate that he can make me feel guilty even if I didn't do anything wrong. The rest of the way home was quiet and the walking is killing me, I didn't even realize it was this far. When we got home no one was in sight. I took a deep breath and sighed. Sandy came running up to me. "Where were you?" she asked, smiling. "I had to go help someone." "Why, what happened?" I asked. "The council is driving everyone insane with moving furniture and getting everything ready for when you come, and you are early so I came to stall," Sandy said with her hands behind her back. As soon as she said that I didn't even think twice and fell down on the ground with everyone looking at me as if I've gone mad. I patted the grass next to me and soon everyone was lying down with their eyes closed. I soaked in the sun. I've never thought about this because I have no reason to, but I wonder what Roland, Natasha, and Tony would say if they knew I'm queen. I don't want revenge nor do I hold a grudge, I just want peace. I sighed and a smile played on my lips. I have everything I could ever wanted. 2 years later, third person POV. Okay, so let me fill you in on what has happened the past 2 years. The past 2 years has been nothing but training for both Zanian and Crystal on how to become a proper king and queen. Crystal had ideas of her own on how a queen should behave, but Zara would hear nothing of it. In fact, Zara gathered all the books on queens throughout the centuries that she could get her hands on and made Crystal read each and every one of them. Zanian on the other hand was stuck between Derek, Charles, and Cameron. Seeing that the true queen has returned, the elders no longer held the power, instead they are now beneath the king and queen. Crystal has told everyone about her history and also filled them in on what she has learned from both Zara and the leather-bound book. Zanian was stunned when Crystal told him about his mark, which he didn't even notice was gone because he still felt the same. Julian on the other hand has been dealing with his own drama now that his mother is back in the picture. Present day Crystal POV. If you make this dress tighter I will tear it when I sit. I complained to Zara, who has me fitting on dress after dress that she thinks is suitable for a queen. To be honest, see, I think you picked up weight, Zara said, and I gasped in shock. I took a step away from her and stared at her with wide eyes and an open mouth, not believing what she just heard. What did you just say? I asked, standing to my full height glaring at Zara. She took a step back and put her hands in the air. I'm sorry, I cut her off with a wave of my hand and said, you have 3 seconds to unzip this dress and get out, I said, pointing towards the zip. Zara scurried and did what I said, knowing she can feel my aura changing into one of frustration. She untied the dress and pulled the zip down, and for the first time this day I feel like I can breathe. Crystal, you are being crowned today and we still haven't found a dress, Zara complained as I walked out of the room wearing nothing but my underwear. After Clarissa had her way, the whole castle looks like a golden kingdom. Everything is decorated in gold, white, and silver, giving off the royalty feeling. There is a total of 500 rooms in the castle, and there are 4 pack houses built separately on the ground with 200 rooms each. Most mates preferred their own little place, so another gift from the former council members was small cottages being built all around the grounds, expanding the kingdom grounds. Fencing has been put up and new gates has been installed. This time it's not ugly or rusty, instead it is two huge gated in the shapes of wings coming together, with a silver moon on the one and a golden sun on the other, coming together like a yin-yang when the gates are closed. Everything is perfect, and to top it all off, Hazel and Isabella has grown up so fast. For 3-year-olds they look like 6-year-old human girls. Isabella is more of the loud one but gentle. She has straight snow-white hair, and sea blue eyes, which fits her perfectly with her porcelain skin. And she is a mommy's girl. Hazel on the other hand is more out there. She has golden hair falling in waves, and she has emerald green eyes with specks of gold in them. She is more Zanian's girl. She would follow him everywhere, even when he went for training. Hazel will follow him and sit and watch him the whole day. She will be the fighter in the family. Both of them never lost their attraction to Leo and Tristan, and neither did the boys. They are now inseparable. Where Hazel goes, Leo would follow, and where Isabella goes, Tristan would follow. They have us running up and down the whole day, which is good because they really do keep us on our toes. I walked off to find Zanian and Julian, but I couldn't find them anywhere, and I don't want to leave our floor because I'm not wearing any clothes. It doesn't bother me, but Zanian and Julian might lose their heads. Zanian, Julian. I called only to have my mouth covered, and I was pulled into a room. From the sparks I'm feeling, it can only be Zanian. When the door closed, Zanian let go of me and I laughed only to have him cover my mouth, glaring at me. I swear if they find me because of you, I will throw you out first. Zanian glared at me and I stopped laughing. He removed his hands and let out a loud sigh. What are you doing here? I asked, feeling his stress through the mate bond. I'm hiding. What does it look like I'm doing? Zanian asked in a tone, looking down at me. I tried not to laugh, but he made it impossible not to. I covered my mouth as soon as the laugh escaped, and it was too late. If you don't come out now, I will drag you both out. Came Zara's voice on the other side of the door. Zanian glared at me and the look on his face made me open the door and step out willingly. Zara glared at me and I just shrugged my shoulders. She took hold of my arm and dragged me off just as Derek made an appearance for Zanian. When Zanian stepped out, he glared at me, and if only looks could hurt. I told you I don't want that one, I said to Zara again after she tried forcing the white traditional gown on me. She threw her hands in the air and said, "Then what do you want?" she asked, and I smiled. I walked over to my closet and took out a gown Zanian bought me as a gift last year. I haven't had the opportunity to wear it yet, and I figured it would be perfect for today. I brought the bag out and walked into the bathroom. I want to see the dress before you make a decision, Zara said, and I just shut the door in her face. I hung the dress over the shower and unzipped the bag, gasping as I see the dress for the second time. The dress is white strapless dress with a golden chest area with a slit up the left leg outlined with small rubies and diamonds. As I got dressed, I couldn't imagine a more perfect dress for the occasion. I would have loved to save this dress for my wedding one day, but then I would deprive Zara from dress hunting. I zipped the dress up as far as I could and walked out of the bathroom. Zara had her back to me, so I cleared my throat, and when she turned around, I wish I had my phone on record. Her jaw literally dropped and her eyes went wide. After staring at me dumbfounded for a few seconds, she straightened and narrowed her eyes at me. "You had this beautiful dress in your closet all along and you are only taking it out now?" she asked, folding her arms over her chest. "Help me zip it up," I asked and turned around. Zara did my makeup and she handed me a pair of perfectly white 6-inch heels to go with the dress. I had to practice a few strides first before even attempting to walk out the door. When it was finally time, I took one last look in the mirror and ran my hands over the dress. Zara did my hair up in a plaited bun that looks more like a rose with a few strands hanging loosely. She did my makeup perfect, not overbearing but enough to know that effort was put into making me extra beautiful. You ready? Zara asked, smiling at me. I looked at her and I was confused because you need a king to give over the king title, and since the king is dead, who is doing the crowning? I asked with a raised brow. Zara smiled at me and said, You will. You have the power to crown a king because you are our true queen. I gasped and looked at Zara as if she just killed a puppy. I don't even know how to walk properly and now she wants me to crown not just one, but 2 kings. Relax, you will know what to do once you are there. Zara said, and I wish I could have her confidence. Zanian POV. Okay, this is just madness, I said, pushing Derek away from me and growled at him. This is your coronation and you only get crowned once, Derek said with a smug smile on his face. I have been in this room for the past hour and all they had to do was put the stupid royal mantle on me and fasten it, but even that seems to take an eternity. If you would just be patient, Julian said, looking as smug as he feels, I bet. He had no trouble because unlike me he had patience. When Derek was finally done we were led out of the rooms and to the throne room where 3 chairs has been out up on stage. I looked at the chairs and the one in the middle is bigger than the other 2 and it is white and silver, not white and gold like the smaller ones. Derek led us to stand beside a table that held an ancient-looking blade, a chalice, a white cloth and a book almost as big as the table. What is that for? I asked, pointing at the book. Derek smiled and walked off without answering, and shouting at him might not be the best thing seeing as there are thousands of eyes staring at me. I looked at Julian standing beside me looking oh so confident and relaxed, whereas I'm everything but. You sound worse than a woman, Blaze said and scoffed at me. I didn't need to turn on look to know Crystal has entered the room, because her aura has changed so much that she brought the whole room to their knees without even speaking a word. When I saw Julian's expression I just had to look, and when I did I was sure I looked like a lovesick puppy. She is wearing the dress I bought her, the jewelry Julian bought and the shoes we both bought. It took me a second to gather my brain and pull it together. She looked at us and smiled. I swear if this room wasn't full I would have ripped that dress of her, not even caring about the price. Get it together, I said to myself, and heard a chuckle from Julian. Judging by the darkening of his eyes he had exactly the same thoughts as I had. Zara left to go and stand next to the now ex-council and smiled an encouraging smile at Crystal. Crystal smiled at us and in a second everything about her changed. Her aura became stronger, if that was even possible, and when she looked at us we saw Raven's eyes. She picked up the blade and said, "With this blade a bond shall be made." And she cut her palm, dripping blood into the chalice. When she was done she cut Julian and he did the same, and she cut me. I hissed when the blade made contact with my skin. I dripped my blood into the chalice and watched as Crystal, no sorry Raven, mixed the blood with the tip of the knife. She picked up the white napkin and dipped it into the blood, holding the now napkin over the book. I watched a few drops landed on the book and our names appeared, not just any name, our birth names. Julian Carmelo, Zanian Blackcork and Crystalia Vulpes. Right beneath our names stood, Kings and Queen of Low Valley Kingdom. That is completed now, there is only one thing left to do, Raven said and turned to us. Seeing her canines extend, Blaze took over and couldn't even stop him, seeing as his mate and queen called for him. Blaze stood on the right side and Julian stood on the left. Julian and I sunk our teeth into Crystal's neck at the same time, feeling our bond strengthen even more. Blaze pulled back, licking the wound clean, as did Julian. Crystal marked first Julian and then she turned to me. "You will sleep for a while as your wolf will change," she said and sunk her teeth into my neck. I saw her pulling back and looked at me. I smiled at her and then as she said I let sleep take me, feeling exhausted and drained. Julian POV. I feel amazing. I feel better than amazing. I feel like I can take on an army and come out at the top. I flex my hands open and closed as I stand in the middle of the woods looking around me. If they told me being mated to a Vulpus member would give me so much power, I would have laughed in their faces. It's like everything about me has been enhanced by 1,000. I can hear more, see more, feel more, and everything I touch, even the smoothest of object, I can feel the hairline cracks and I can see the faults. Looking up at the trees, I swear I can see the energy flowing through them and the vibrations coming from their roots beneath the earth. Everything is so much more vibrant. I feel like I was blind my whole life and that my eyes has only been opened recently. As I stood there getting lost in the beauty around me, Crystal's voice rang in my head. After the crowning yesterday, Zanian was taken to the room and the official announcement will be made today, and a pack bond will be formed. That is if he wakes up today. Where are you? Crystal asked through mind link, sounding exhausted. I'm admiring nature. I said and heard her sighed. I need help, she said, and I ran back to the castle. Even my speed has increased. When I got the castle, everyone was scurrying around with dishes and tables and pails of food. I stood watching in confusion at everything that is happening. Julian! Crystal shouted through mind link, making me win CE. I'm here, I said and walked into the house. Good, I'm upstairs, she said, and I took the steps 2 at a time, not wanting to anger her more. I saw our bedroom door open and walked in. She was standing by the bed next to Zanian, looking down at him. What is going on? I asked, and she spun around glaring at me. You would know if you were here, wouldn't you? She said, and she looks mad. I held my hands up in surrender and walked closer to her. What can I do? I asked, looking at her with a smile playing at my lips. I know having a woman angry at you is never a good thing, but when Crystal is angry I just want to laugh because she thinks she looks like a lion, instead she looks like a soft fluffy teddy bear. Crystal let out a sigh and sat down at the edge of the bed. I don't know what to do. I mean, my one mate is out cold, the other keeps disappearing, and I have no idea where the kids are. As soon as she said that, she jumped up and ran out of the room. I stood there confused for a second and then followed behind her. I have no idea where my kids are, Crystal said, going from room to room on the top floor. I walked up to her and put my hands on her shoulders. I have never seen her this stressed or frightened before. I'm sure they are with Delia, I said, standing in front of Crystal. She wanted to pull away from me, so instead I threw her over my shoulder with a sinister smile on my face. Julian, what are you doing? Put me down, Crystal said, and all I did was give her a smack, making her gasp in surprise. You know what you need? I asked, trying to sound serious. You need to cool off, I said, walking downstairs past everyone, not even caring at the stares and glares we are getting. Julian, put me down, Crystal said in a stern voice, moving around trying to get out of my grip, which only tightened. You are way too stressed, I said, smiling at everyone we pass. I stepped down from the last step and walked towards the door. Everyone we pass slightly bow their heads and some watch with amusement. I walked out of the house, taking the long way around towards the backyard. I haven't even noticed that we drew a crowd. Julian, I swear if you don't put me down now you will not. She couldn't finish her sentence because the one thing I really admire of this kingdom is the Olympic-size swimming pool. I did say she needs to cool off, didn't I? Crystal let out a shriek just before the water swallowed her up. I dusted my hands, hearing gasps and looking at shocked faces. I waited for her to come back up, and when she did I swear she could boil water with the anger rolling off her. I smiled at her and waited for her to say something, and she didn't. Instead she swam towards the ladder and got out. I was expecting screaming and shouting, but the smile growing on her face I knew something is up. She took time in drying her hair out, and with every move she made I grew more suspicious. "What are you up to?" I thought and watched her every movement. Everyone is quiet, some not even breathing. Crystal walked closer to me and I took a step back. "You just declared a war," Crystal said, giving a sinister laugh as she walks away, making me swallow hard. I looked around the field and I saw Delia trying hard not to laugh, having all the kids around her. I looked at Crystal's retreating form and I narrowed my eyes. "What are you up to?" I thought. Crystal POV: I feel like a headless chicken running around not knowing where I'm going. I barely slept last night, constantly waking up to check on Zanian and make sure he is still breathing, which I know because I can feel his wolf changing and his power becoming more dominant. I woke up this morning to find Julian missing and Zara standing next to my bed tapping her foot. I barely even had time to wake up and she was already talking about the day and dresses. I groaned and pulled the covers over my face. "Being late will never be a good thing for a queen," Zara said and pulled the covers off me. "Zara, just go away," I said, sitting up. I looked over at Zanian and sighed. After I had a nice hot shower, the crazy started. Zara handed me dress after dress and I was seriously becoming allergic to dresses and longed for a t-shirt and some shorts. We finally decided on a dress and she left. Feeling so exhausted and irritated I couldn't even sit still. I am exhausted from stressing and irritated by Zara being in my space and in my face only talking about dresses and how a queen should act. Zanian should be waking up today, so the official title announcements are today and a pack bond shall be formed today, and all this is giving me stress. I rubbed my temples and realized I haven't even eaten today. Everything was happening so fast and I ran back up to our room when I saw all the people carrying dishes and food and tables and I just couldn't anymore. No one ever said that being queen would be this stressful. I linked Julian thinking he could help me calm down, but he took his time in getting here and by the time he got here my nerves got the better of me. I was rambling on and on until I realized what I had just said. I don't even know where my kids are. That was all it took to send me over the edge. I ran out of the room and started searching every room on the top floor and I could feel Raven getting restless because I lost our kids. Julian laid his hands on my shoulder and just from his touch I calmed down a little and was able to think. I know they will be with Delia because of the boys, so I exhaled loudly just to be thrown over Julian's shoulder. I didn't think much of it at first and then I felt his excitement through the mate bond and started struggling to get down and he only tightened his grip. After seeing the crowd he has gathered I knew something's up. "Julian, I swear if you don't put me down now you will not." I couldn't even finish my sentence when I felt him throwing me. I let out a high-pitched shriek and my body made contact with the cold water. I took my brain a second to realize what he had just done and when I came up he had a smug smile on his face and half the pack were covering their mouths staring in horror. Anger was rolling off me in waves. Instead of screaming I got out of the water, forming a plan of my own. The one thing I noticed about Julian is he hates being dirty, especially if it's sticky. As I got out of the water my smile widened as I came up with the perfect plan on how to get him back. "You just declared war," I said and saw him swallow. I took a step forward and he took one back. I turned around and walked away feeling very calm and all my thoughts were in order. I know what my first act as queen will be. Knowing that a smile grew on my face and the fact that I could Damien's distress just made my smile widen. 3 hours later and I'm still sitting staring at Zanian with wide eyes. When I came back to change after the whole pool story with Julian I found Zanian awake and smiling. "How are you feeling?" I asked for the 100th time. "Better than you can ever imagine," Zanian said and his smile widened. "He looks amazing and I never thought I would say this, but his skin looks almost like it's glowing and the power rolling off him is equal to mine and Julian's." I guess he really did accept his responsibilities. Julian came in pleading with me as not to do anything crazy, but I wouldn't hear any of it. What have you done now? Zanian asked, looking at Julian with a raised brow. As if just realizing, Julian stared at Zanian shocked for a second and then explained what happened. When Zanian laughed, a chill ran down my spine because even his laugh is deeper. Well, you're in for a surprise, Zanian said and got off the bed. All of us got ready and walked to the training grounds where everything has been set up for the rest of the ceremony. As we walked out, everyone bowed their heads and addressed us formally. This will take some getting used to, I thought. As soon as the official titles had been given, we had to choose 2 betas and 2 gammas. Reason being, 2 is 1 beta and gamma to always be by the king and queen's side and the other pack duties, and also they will serve as our messengers for the kingdom to other packs. I looked at Zanian and said, you can choose your beta and gamma. Zanian stepped forward and announced, Zane White and Kyle White will be the first beta and gamma. Zanian said and stepped back. I took a look around the field, asking the previous beta and gamma to step forward. You will serve as the second beta and gamma, I said, and they stepped onto the stage bowing their heads. Like before, I did the same thing, cut their palms, mixed the blood and dripped it on the book. The book is called a royal blood book. Every king and queen together with their betas and gammas, their names are written in this book, and when another is chosen or crowned, the book has to be filled in, and only when the book recognizes the blood will you receive the official title. Crazy, I know, and so mysterious. I mean, how does a book know who the blood belongs to? As soon as their names appeared, I introduced them to the pack. I give you Zane White first beta, Kyle White first gamma, Andre Green second beta and Llewellyn Feller second gamma. I could feel their auras change, as did the rest of the pack, because everyone bowed. I give you your kings and queen, Derek said, and howls ripped through the sky. Zara stepped forward holding a thick book that looks thousands of years old. Zara held a blade in her one hand and walked up to the table. To bind a pack, I will need a drop of blood from each and every one, Zara said, and held her hand out for me. It took about an hour to get to everyone. She opened the book and mumbled a few things. Hundreds of voices came flowing into my mind, and I could feel each and every member. This is amazing, I thought, and I can't believe I forgot what it felt to be a part of a pack, and for the first time in a long time we have a home and a purpose. I looked over at Zanian and Julian, and they were both smiling. Everyone ate, and at midnight everyone shifted for a pack run, which is tradition. I shifted and howled, and everyone followed. When Zanian shifted, I noticed his wolf has a golden crown on his forehead at the exact spot Raven has the Vulpes family crest. Blaze stood tall and proud, hovering over every wolf except for mine. His power rolled off him in waves. He put his head back and howled, then he took off running. I caught up, and now I was running between Zanian and Julian, both of them keeping up with me with smirks on their faces. Crystal POV to those who says queens should be stubborn and strict has clearly never met a queen like me. I can be fun, gentle, rough, rational, irrational, and everything else you can think about, and right now I am being everything but rational. It's been a week since the pack run and our official title announcement, and everyone is so scared of talking because they might say something wrong, so instead of talking they just keep silent, making the kingdom a very uncomfortable place. So for my first act as queen, I'm throwing an informal party, where everyone will join and have fun to lighten them up and show them that they have nothing to be scared of. I know it is strongly advised against because a certain level of respect should be kept, but really having everyone walking on eggshells around you is not what I had in mind. What are you thinking about? Zanian asked, standing behind me as I stood in our bedroom looking down at the kingdom and the wolves. I haven't told Zanian what I'm thinking, and I don't think I will just yet, because he is the more rational one. So he would try and stop me, saying it's not a good idea and that this is the kingdom, not our old pack. Well, the kingdom is too stiff. I want to go into town today, I said and smiled at him. To do what? Julian asked, standing up from the bed. I just need to go get a few things and then I will come right back. I will take Zane and Kyle with me if it will make you feel better, I said, crossing my arms looking at my guys. To do what? Julian asked again, standing beside Zanian. It's a surprise and I don't want to spoil it, I said, blocking my mind link from the pack and both of them. How long will you be? Zanian asked. I don't know, few hours, I said, throwing my hands in the air. Okay, we're coming, Julian said, looking at me. I opened and closed my mouth a few times and finally said, no, because it's a surprise. Zanian looked at me and narrowed his eyes. Tell us the truth or you can't go, Zanian said, causing Julian to glare at me. I let out a deep breath and told them what I have planned and that I want to go and collect the stuff and buy some things. And as I expected, Zanian was not happy and neither was Julian. They both were staring at me like I have lost my mind. Really, this will be your first act as queen? Damien asked, and I could hear the sarcasm in his voice. I huffed at them and said, I will go anyway, so you either come with or stay, I said, and walked off to shower and get dressed. When I came out of the bathroom, Julian and Zanian were both dressed in casual clothes. Zanian wearing blue jeans with a white buttoned-down shirt and Julian wearing black jeans with a plain white shirt. They are the complete opposites, Zanian giving the good guy vibe and Julian giving off the ad boy look. I walked into my closet and got out something to complement them both. I put on a pair of white ripped skinny jeans with a low waist and a deep red crop top stopping just above my navel. I did my hair up in a high ponytail, leaving it to hang down my back. I put on my red ankle boots and walked out of the closet looking at the guys who is staring at me with dark wish-filled eyes. When we left, everyone was staring with curiosity and some stared with wish and envy. We made our way out. Zanian has already asked Zane to bring the car around. When Zane saw us, he whistled at me and bowed his head, mocking me. Where are you off to, my dear queen? He asked, sarcasm laced in his voice. You will see when we get back. In the meantime, clear the backyard by the pool and make sure it's clean, I said, and got in behind the wheel. Zanian and Julian started bickering on who sits in front, so I told them both to get in the back. They mumbled, but got in and I pulled away. This is the first time in a long time that I am actually driving into the city with a goal in mind. We stopped at the party factory first to pick up what I had ordered, and I bought the things so we don't have to send it back and can use it whenever. We got jumping castles, lip and slides, ball pools and everything else that is fun. I hadn't realized the car would be so small, so we had to rent a small truck which Zanian said he will drive. After that we went to the liquor store and bought everything they had in stock. To say the cashier lady/owner was very happy would be an understatement, because this is her biggest sale since she has the shop. They helped us load everything in the truck and strapped it in tightly, and we left to the mall next. Now all we have to do is get the food and snacks. This was the part I was dreading, because the malls is where the human hang out and they are always looking for new entertainment. I parked the car and we got out. Zanian will go and pick up the truck on our way home, so we left it by the liquor store. When Zanian and Julian got out the car, a lot of heads turned and I felt very possessive. I waited for them and linked my arm through theirs, but they had a better idea. They each put a hand in the back pocket of my jeans and I put mine in theirs. I could feel the anger and jealousy rolling off the girls and woman that was looking at us. We walked into the shop and every female's head turned in our direction. I sighed internally and put a fake smile on my face. Zanian POV: being in power isn't how I expected it to be. Having someone be afraid of you was never an appealing thought to me, and that won't change even if I am king. I tried talking to a few wolves and they addressed me too formally and couldn't keep eye contact. I have no idea what Eliza and Mario did to these wolves, but they literally put the fear of death into them. A she-wolf broke a cup yesterday and started crying, begging for me not to harm her. I was left so confused that I called Crystal. Whatever she did calmed the she-wolf down, and afterwards she looked at me and I could see the wheels turning in her head. We went to bed like normal, but something felt different. Crystal was half distant and usually she sleeps in the middle, instead they slept on my side, claiming that she is feeling hot. Julian and I have been talking a lot more since he knows more about being king than I do. He has been helping me learn the ropes. In the morning when I woke up, Crystal wasn't in bed, instead she was standing by the window looking at the kingdom. "Good morning," I said and waited for her to answer, which she never did. I got up from the bed and walked over to her and stood behind her. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, hoping she would just tell me what is going on in her mind. "I want to go into town today," Crystal said, smiling at me like a little girl. Before I could even answer, Julian beat me to it. "To do what?" Julian asked. "I just need to get a few things and then I will come back. I will take Zane and Kyle with me if it will make you feel better," Crystal said, crossing her arms, and I can feel irritation rolling off her. "To do what?" Julian asked again, standing beside me. "It's a surprise and I don't want to spoil it," Crystal said, and right then I knew she was lying, because Crystal cannot plan surprises for anyone without giving something away. "How long will you be?" I asked with narrowed eyes. "I don't know, a few hours," Crystal said, throwing her hands in the air like a child about to throw a tantrum. "Okay, we're coming," Julian said, causing Crystal to look like a fish on dry land. Opening and closing her mouth a few times, and eventually she gave up. She let out a loud sigh and told us everything she has planned, and I have to give her points for trying. When she was done explaining, I stood there not knowing what to say, and judging by Julian's stiff posture he didn't either. "Really, this will be your first act as queen?" Damien asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. Crystal scoffed and said, "I will go anyway, so either you come with or stay." And she walked off, closing the bathroom door behind her. Julian and I got dressed in casual clothes, not wanting to draw too much attention to ourselves. I linked Zane to bring the SUV around and leave it in the driveway. It feels great being able to mind-link my pack. When Crystal came out of the walk-in closet wearing white skinny jeans and a deep red crop top, I could have chained her to this bed and never let her see sunlight again. I could feel my eyes darkening and my pants became tight. I had to stop myself from growling and throwing her over my shoulder. "What is she playing at?" I asked myself as we made our way out of the house. Never in my life have I bought this much booze that it barely fit in the small truck I had to rent. What is she doing? Does she want to poison everyone with alcohol? I wondered and watched as she walked over to the car waiting for Julian and me. We won ourselves the back seat because we couldn't decide on who gets to sit in front. We got in and now it was time to go to the mall. I could have laughed at the irritation flowing through the mate bond coming from Crystal. I looked over at Julian and he has a smile on his face. "Just relax," I whispered into Crystal's ear, squeezing her a little. She looked at me and gave me a soft smile. We continued walking and eventually found a treats store. As soon as we walked in, every head turned our way, and now I know how Crystal feels. I could kill every guy here staring openly at Crystal with filled eyes. I looked over at Julian, feeling his possessiveness through the bond. "You need to relax," Crystal said, giving me my own advice back. "Do you see how everyone is staring at you?" Julian asked. "Everyone always stare at something they can't have," Crystal said and shrugged her shoulders. Crystal POV, I could throw my head back and laugh at the guys, but that will only anger them more. Now they know how I felt when every female was staring at them like they were something to eat. I told Zanian and Julian to grab 2 trolleys and started walking down the aisles grabbing everything that looks delicious. Can I help you with something? A guy asked walking up to me. I smiled at him and said, no thank you, we're good. He looked behind me staring at Zanian and Julian. The human isn't bad looking. He smiled softly and left us. I looked at Zanian and he was glaring at the guy. Would you relax? I asked and kept on walking. About 2 hours later we left the store and now looking for a fun store. I don't like this. Julian said walking beside me with his eyes focused on every guy staring at me. Zanian walked on the other side of me doing exactly the same, glaring. I just smiled and kept on walking. We saw and smelled a few wolves here, but they just looked at us and looked away. Zanian! I heard a woman say, causing all of us to stop. Zanian looked around and his body stiffened. An older she-wolf was walking over, her eyes never leaving Zanian's. Nelly! Zanian said, putting down the packets and meeting her halfway. He threw his arms around her and crushed her small frame to his. He pulled away and for the first time I saw his eyes shining with tears. I walked over to them with Julian following. Nelly, I would like for you to meet my mate and her other mate. Zanian said, looking at me and Julian introducing us. Nelly looked at Zanian confused and he explained that I'm his second chance. Nelly's eyes lit up and she crushed me in a hug. Zanian gave her his number and said she should call him tomorrow. They said goodbye and we continued shopping. Zanian's whole mood changed from murderous jealousy to surprise and joy. Who was that? I asked, not able to hide my curiosity anymore. She was the closest thing I could ever have to a sister. Zanian said, and I was confused. But she is so much older than you. I said, looking at Zanian. She isn't actually. She is the same age as me. When her parents died, her wolf went feral and she disappeared for weeks, and when she came back she didn't have a wolf anymore and she never spoke about what happened when she left and we never asked. So she ages a lot faster now. Zanian said and shrugged his shoulders. The rest of the shopping was quiet and fast. We have just decided to ignore the stares. That was until we got hungry and had no other choice but to go to a small cafe. We took the only empty table that was left and it happened to be right in the middle. The waitress's eyes were glued to Zanian and Julian, and in the last 10 minutes we had 3 different waitresses. All of them had their shirts half open. I looked at them and just shook my head. I have never in my life seen more desperate girls than these ones. We ordered coffee and a waitress with blonde hair brought it over. I noticed that her skirt seems shorter. She bent over between Julian and Zanian, putting their coffee down in front of them. When her eyes caught mine, her smile died and she glared at me, and in return I just smiled at her and got up from my chair. Zanian and Julian looked at me confused and I walked off to the counter. I was greeted by an older friendly woman. Hi, I would like to ask for a different waiter. I said to the woman and her eyes landed on our table. She sighed and shook her head. I will send one over, honey. She said, and I walked back to our table. I smiled and waved at the waitress as the older woman called her back. Zanian and Julian smiled at me and sipped at their coffee. Hi, my name is Jared and I will be your waiter for the time being. A friendly guy said, standing next to our table smiling at us. I looked at him and smiled. I know he won't try anything because he is gay. After we had our lunch and left Jared a very generous tip, we continued our shopping and by 5 in the afternoon we were done. Now it's time to go home. The drive home was quiet, so I put my music on and played Alan Walker at high volume. Julian decided to drive with Zanian in the truck, so I am all alone in the car with an open bag of chips on my lap. When I finally made it home, my bladder was screaming at me, so I parked the car and ran into the house. I came back down and was greeted by Hazel and Isabella running up to me. I caught them and picked them up, kissing their soft faces and their laughter filling my ears. "Mommy, where were you?" Isabella asked, nuzzling her head in the crook of my neck. "I got a surprise," I said, and saw both their faces light up. "Go get onto Delia and the boys," I said, setting them down, and watched them run off. We unloaded the truck and car, leaving everything at the back of the yard and stacking the booze in the kitchen. I could see everyone's excitement and hoped that this is what they need to loosen up a bit. By the time we were done it was already dark, so tomorrow we will have a party. Zanian POV: after we got back yesterday we offloaded, and by the time we were done it was already dark, so Crystal said that we would move the celebration to today, but that won't happen. I'm currently sitting in my office with Julian and Crystal and the elders. Well, they aren't elders anymore, seeing that we overpower them, so they became our advisors. We got calls from numerous packs seeking an audience with the king and queen. Derek said, looking between us. "What for?" Crystal asked. "The bigger packs has been attacking the smaller packs, almost wiping them out," Derek said. "It is time that we announce the new kings and queens so we can invite all the packs, and then after we can see to the matter," Clarissa said, speaking for the first time in 2 hours. "But this is too soon," I said, looking at Derek. "No, this is a perfect timing," Derek said and elaborated. "The only reason pack are starting to attack each other is because they think nothing will be done to them," Derek said, and now I get where he is going with this. They will smell my blood and link it with Mario and Eliza, therefore they will recognize me as king without question. "Okay, invite the packs to the formal celebration on Saturday, which gives us enough time to prepare and them enough time to get here," I said, and stood up from the table feeling satisfied with my decision. Crystal and Julian got up and we made our way out. We called for a pack meeting and informed them about the formal invitations and that we will receive guests. We also informed them about the party we were planning on having will be moved to in the week or the following weekend. Everyone agreed and they smiled as they walked off towards Crystal to get their assigned tasks. Maggie is still the same as ever, her domain in the kitchen, but now she doesn't have to be alone because now she had Martha and Jennifer to keep her company and help her. Martha and Jennifer was the cooks for Eliza and Mario, and they said they will love to cook for someone who will appreciate it, and so Maggie joined them, and they cook up a storm every day. We do have Omegas in the pack, but they are not defined by their ranks rather than their strengths. We are waiting for a trainer who will be sent to us from the Royal Army, and they should be here later today or tomorrow. The only downside is I will have to go through personal training as well as Crystal and Julian. That will help us control our power and help us to never lose control. Crystal POV: this is the nightmare I have been dreading. I have been dreading to invite the packs here, knowing I will see Natasha and Tony and Roland again. I'm not holding anything against them, but seeing them again will definitely not be pleasant. Especially now that I'm queen, Natasha will grovel and act being sorry just so that I will accept her. Roland will, well, I'm not even sure what he will do, and Tony on the other hand, I don't want to see him. Even through everything and all the suffering, I never thought he would take part in what happened to me, let alone killing me. Sandy skipped towards me and hugged my side. She has been accepted as our adoptive daughter by the pack, and everyone treats her with the same respect as though she is a real princess. Her birthday will be on Sunday when all the packs are here, so we will do something for her as well. "Hey honey!" I greeted her, putting my arm around her shoulder. "I heard the packs are coming, do you think I will find a mate?" she asked and lowered her gaze. I looked at her and I could feel her uncertainty. "Honey, any guy would be a fool to reject you. You are beautiful and perfect in every way," I said and kissed the top of her head. "I'm scared," she said in a low whisper. "Don't be, Sandy, because you will find someone and he will treat you like a queen," I said and hugged her closer. I can't wait until you shift, I said, breaking her train of thought. She tilted her head and looked at me confused. When I grew up my eyes were two different colors like yours is now, and all the reading I did never explained why, but the one thing I've learned is that whenever a wolf baby two different color eyes they have a split personality, which means they are a crossbreed, I said, looking at Sandy, who looks deep in thought. Did you know your parents well? I asked, knowing it's a touchy subject for her. They weren't my real parents. They found me in the woods when they went for a run, and I asked them about my real parents and about the day they found me, and my mother just said that they were asked to look after me and protect me by all means necessary. I looked at Sandy and remember the story Eliza told me about the day I was taken to the pack I grew up in. Zara told them the exact same thing. Honey, may I see something? I asked, sitting down on the grass patting the space in front of me. Sandy sat down and gave me her hands. You can look at my memories, she said, and I was taken aback because I didn't think she knew. I took her hands in mine and gasped when I saw the woman carrying her. It's Zara. Zara brought Sandy here 15 years ago. I let go of Sandy's hands and stood up. I have to go and see someone, honey, but I will see you at dinner, okay? I said, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. I need to have a word with Zara. I went in search for her and finally found her in the kitchen doing taste testing for the ladies. Can I speak to you? I asked, causing everyone to look at me. What about? Zara asked cautiously. About something that happened 15 years ago, I said, and waited for her to follow me. We walked up to Zanian's office as it's soundproof, and when I opened the door Zanian looked up at me. I just need to use your office for a few minutes if you don't mind, I said, and he looked at me confused. I gave him a look and he stood up and walked out. I closed the door, turning to Zara. Why have you been stealing kids and hiding them in different packs? I asked, waiting for her to answer. It's not like what you think, she said, defending herself. Then please explain to me, because I wasn't the first and definitely not the last, I said, and she sighed, looking at me. I have been collecting babies and rescuing them. I never stole a baby, Zara said, and looked at me. Why? I asked, crossing my arms. It's crossbreed babies, okay? Babies that's illegal, that shouldn't even exist, Zara said, and I narrowed my eyes at her. How do you come to know of these babies? I asked. I get dreams telling me where to go and when, and what to do with the baby, Zara said, and I gaped at her. Where did you find Sandy? I asked, crossing my arms. That's how you found out, isn't it? Zara asked, taking a step closer to me. Yes. I asked her about her parents and what they were, and she told me they weren't even her real parents, so I looked into her memories and saw you running with her, bringing her here, only you were younger, I said, and received a look from Zara. You won't understand, Zara said, looking down. Then explain it to me. Why have you been collecting babies? I asked again in a softer tone. Because they were going to be killed, just like you. Eliza wanted to kill you, but I got to you first and hid you. I did the same with Sandy and every other baby I have hidden. Zara dragged her hands over her face and said, I don't know how it works. See, I get a dream and I go, I collect the baby and I take it to where I'm supposed to. Other than that I don't know, Zara said, and I was left speechless. When was the last time? I asked, looking at her. A week ago. A baby boy. His mother is Fae and his father an elf. Where is he now? I asked. He's here. A couple who has been trying for a baby for years has him. I looked at her and said, from now on every baby you collect you will bring here. We will build a home for them and we will take care of them, I said, and Zara smiled at me. She walked up to me and threw her hands around my neck, hugging me close. Thank you, see, she said, and let go of me. Where did you find Sandy? I asked because I have to know. In a cabin. A woman just gave birth to her and I told her I was sent for the baby and she already knew. She was a fox, but the father is unknown. Zara said and my head snapped up. So I was right. I thought and smiled to myself. I excused myself from Zara having something to take care of and walked off to find Zanian. I found him and Julian in the back garden admiring the roses. Hello mates! I said and hugged them from behind. I have a request. I said and faced them. I want it known that every fox in hiding will be welcomed in the kingdom. I said and received weird looks from them. Why? Julian asked smiling softly. Because we have a chance to set things right and that is what I want to do. Besides our lives will get even busier when you find out what I have just learned. I said and shook my head. Julian and Zanian stared at me so I filled them in on my conversation with Zara and what I have decided. Are you insane? See, those babies will draw attention. Zanian said and I glared at him. If we give them a home and help them understand who they are they can live a normal life Zanian. I said and stepped back from him. I will take the responsibility for them and I will teach them everything I possibly can, you just need to build the place for me. I said and glared at him. We'll talk more about this when we dealt with the packs. Zanian said and I looked at Julian for help. Julian looked at me and said, I will get a team to build whatever it is you need and I will back you up. Zanian spun around and stared at Julian like he is ready to kill him. Julian shrugged his shoulders and winked at me. You will be the death of me. Zanian said and finally gave in. You can have you home and your babies, but you will take full responsibility for them and you will resume your duties as queen and our mates which will be your first priority. Zanian said and I jumped into his arms like a small kid. Always. I said and kissed him passionately showing him all my love. Crystal POV I woke up feeling butterfly kisses on my face and neck and hand roaming over my body. I didn't want to move or wake up afraid it would stop. Good morning, it's time to wake up sleepyhead. Zanian said kissing my face wherever he finds space. I groaned and said, just 5 more minutes. A deep chuckle came from Julian and our bedroom door slammed open and I could hear 2 sets of tiny feet running towards the bed and then they were on me. Mommy, wake up! Isabella said falling down on me. I'm up baby. I said caressing her cheeks smiling at her softly. Why are you guys up so early? I asked looking between them. Because we will get friends today. That's what Daddy said. Hazel said looking at Zanian as if waiting for him to deny. The fog lifted from my brain and I jumped upright realizing that it's Friday most of the packs will be arriving today for the formal gathering tomorrow. I looked at Zanian who was tickling Hazel and put Isabella on Julian's stomach. I moved down on the bed until I could finally get off. I stood up and stretched my arms above my head. Time for a shower and clothes hunting. After I had a shower I walked around in my bathrobe until it was time to get dressed. Deliog took the girls and they are playing dress up as for Zanian and Julian, well they are already dressed and outside. The trainers finally arrived and training has been grueling. Let me tell you I would rather sit in a cell than go through that training. I never ever imagined I could be so out of shape and so unfit. And just to make it clear I'm not the only one complaining everyone who has been going through training is complaining. Even the warriors has been complaining and sleeping like logs. Hazel will sit and watch training every day and I know she will one day be the best warrior this kingdom has ever had. Isabella on the other hand is too proper. She will make even me jealous with how proper she will be one day. I left the room in search for food and found dessert instead. Literally all my favorite things was lined up on the kitchen counter. I decided to steal a bowl of fruits with ice cream, and just when I was about to make a run for it, Maggie was standing by the door with her arms crossed and tapping her foot. I removed the spoon from my mouth and smiled at her. I couldn't help it. I said, giving her my most innocent look. "What am I to do with you and your sweet tooth?" Maggie asked, shaking her head. I never used to like sweet things, and then one day Maggie introduced me to mousse and fruits with a spoon of ice cream, and since then I am totally in love with sweet things. You could make more desserts and stash them, I said, batting my eyelashes at her, hoping she would fall for it. She finally smiled and said, "For you anything, my dear." I squeezed past her, kissing her cheek, and ran back up the stairs before anyone catches me. I sat and ate in silence when the door opened and Zainian walked in. The spoon was in my mouth and my bowl half empty. Zainian looked at me and shook his head, walking closer. He removed the spoon from my mouth and took a bite of my dessert. The way he did it made me clench my thighs together and bite my lip to stop a whimper for escaping. Zainian knew very well what he was doing to me, because he gave me a slow, seductive smile and leaned in close to my ear. "I can just imagine how this would taste if I could eat it of you," Zainian said, taking my earlobe between his teeth. A moan escaped my mouth, and just then Julian walked in. "Having fun without me?" he asked with a raised brow. To say Zainian kept to his imagination, and I have to go for a second shower, which I will not complain about. As I took a shower washing the leftover ice cream off me, the images of what just happened flowed through my mind. After my shower I got dressed, as it's almost time for the arrivals. I got dressed in a white gown that reaches the floor, and it has silver beads covering the chest area with thin straps. I wore silver heels and left my hair hanging down my back. My makeup was minimal and my jewelry were simple diamond earrings with a matching necklace. I left the room and walked down the stairs, receiving stares and jaws dropping. I heard a whistle and looked up to the one and only Zain. He bowed and held his hand out for me to take. I took his hand and climbed the last steps. He escorted me out order from Zainian, and he is not allowed to leave my side for the next few days. I rolled my eyes as I went to stand outside in the middle of Zainian and Julian. When they saw me, their eyes turned a shade darker and their smiles grew. The cars started coming in, and now it's time to be formal. As the alphas came, we greeted them, and most of them were shocked to see Zainian, probably because he's the spitting image of Odin. As for Julian, well, he has been receiving his fair share of stares and dirty looks, but no one dares say anything. "How much longer?" I asked Zainian under my breath. "Just 3 more and then we are all done," Zainian said and kissed the top of my head. I watched as the brand new Mustang drives in, and I cannot avert my eyes. When the car stopped and I saw who got out, my heart stopped for a second and the past threatened to haunt me once more. I took Julian's and Zainian's hands in mine to help me calm down. It feels like my heart is beating a million beats per minute. Roland looks different, that I noticed. He looks more grown up and less like a child. Natasha, on the other hand, still looks the same. She still looks like high maintenance with a bad attitude. Tony, who was standing behind them, had his head bent forward looking at the ground, and Danny couldn't keep his eyes off the castle. I felt Zainian squeeze my hand and I looked up at him. "You are stronger, see?" Zainian said, and I just nodded my head. The 4 of them walked up to us and I made sure my aura is at its strongest. They walked up to us with their heads bowed, greeting formally. I pulled my aura back a bit so that they can look up. Natasha was the first to look up and gasped when she saw me. "Crystal," she said, and I growled, not wanting to hear my name leave her lips. She bowed her head immediately and apologized. Tony, Danny, and Roland's heads snapped up at the mention of my name, and it was my turn to smirk at their expressions. Roland looks like he was ready to fall on his knees begging for forgiveness. Danny wished the earth could swallow him, and Tony was looking at me with a small sad smile on his lips. I now know that they were never my blood siblings, but they were the only family I knew and they broke me. When Natasha looked at me again, her eyes held anger and jealousy. I looked at her and dismissed them inside. A she-wolf will show you the way to your rooms, I said, and turned away from them just as Zanian's brother pulled up, and now it was my turn to stand with him and hold his hand. Unlike me, he haven't seen his brother since the age of 16, and what they did to him can never be compared to anything. Zanian stiffened beside me and he had his jaw clenched. I laid my hand on his back, rubbing small circles as to calm him down. I seemed to work until Zack walked closer with a smug smile. He lowered his head in acknowledgement, but his whole attitude screamed arrogance. It's good to see you, Z, Zack said, and Zanian bunched his fists up by his sides. A male will show you where your room is, I said, and dismissed him inside so that Zanian can breathe. Zack looked at me and winked, and I lost it. I let my aura surround the three of us, forcing Zack to take a knee. He tried fighting the command but finally gave in and bent a knee. You will show some respect seeing that you were invited to our home, I said with authority in my voice. I'm sorry, my queen, Zack said, and bent his head to the side in submission. Don't let it happen again, I said, and dismissed him. As soon as everyone was gone, Zanian bust out laughing, pulling me into his arms. I looked at him confused for a second and looked over at Julian, who shrugs his shoulders. Have you gone mad? I asked, trying to push away from him. You should have seen his face, Zanian said, smiling. Thank you, Zanian said, and pulled me into a bear hug. Zane came out saying lunch will be served in 10 minutes. As we made our way in, we were the last to arrive and the talking stopped. All eyes were now on us. I noticed Natasha is sitting on the left of Julian and Roland on the right by Zanian. How did they get that right? I wondered as I took a seat in the middle on the queen's chair. Everyone at the table were looking at us without blinking, so Zanian finally stood up and said, "Enjoy your lunch and we will all talk after." Everyone started eating and the room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Crystal POV, I didn't miss the looks I was getting from Roland, and I certainly didn't miss the flirtatious looks Natasha gave Zanian. She didn't give much attention to Julian because she always believed that they shouldn't mix with Wolf, let alone mate them. Dinner went by quietly and now dessert is served. My smile grew when Maggie personally laid my dessert in front of me. I thanked her and started eating. I heard 2 sets of feet and felt them before I heard them calling me. Mommy, Mommy, guess what we found? Isabella said, standing beside Zanian. I looked at her and at the table. Please excuse me for a second, I said, and got up from my chair. I picked Isabella up and Hazel followed behind. I could feel holes being stared into my back, and when I turned around, Roland was looking at me with dark eyes. I stopped by the children's table and asked Sandy to follow me. When we got outside, Leo ran up to me carrying a bunny. It is hurt, he said, and showed me the white bunny. Where did you find the bunny? I asked, taking it from his hand. We caught a few, Dahlia said as she came in carrying a crying Tristan. That was the only one hurt and the rest of the bunnies is in my house, she said, and shook her head. I took the bunny, holding it close to me, and I healed him. I handed him back to Leo and asked, "What will you name him?" He looked thoughtful for a second and then said, "I'm gonna call him Softy." Leo said and hugged the bunny. You asked for me, Sandy said from behind me. Yes, I'm sorry to bother you, but can you please help Dahlia with the babies? I asked, and she smiled, nodding her head. Her birthday will be tomorrow and all the packs are invited, and I really hope she finds her mate. I walked back into the dining hall and the tension was thick. I sat down and apologized once again and picked up my spoon. So you have kids? I heard Natasha ask, but I didn't sound like a friendly conversation. I looked up at her through my lashes and said, "Yes, I do," I said, and took a bite of my dessert. That's nice, she said, and I could hear the envy in her voice. Roland looked at me and I could see anger and jealousy behind his eyes. Don't you have kids? I asked, and Natasha looked down because we both know you can't get pregnant with anyone else except your true mate. I smirked and ate my dessert, almost licking the plate clean. Zanian put his hand on my thigh and I looked up at him. He smiled at me and I could see his eyes darken a shade. After we were all done and the dishes has been taken away, the kids has been excused, leaving just the grown ups. Zane pulled the doors closed and came to stand beside me. I smiled and looked at Zanian. He nodded at me and I stood up. As you all know, the kingdom has been closed off for quite a few years now, and we want you to know that has changed and the kingdom will start function like normal. Queen Eliza and King Mario died there for the rightful heir. Zanian Black Cork has been accepted as king. As I'm sure you all know the story about the missing prince, since we were all told from a young age the tales of Odin Cork. I looked around the table at pale faces and shocked faces. With us today there is a vampire and also my mate. You will treat him with the same respect or you will deal with the consequence. Mating between wolves and vampires has been legalized, therefore you shall never harm a vampire or wolf from you packs if they happen to be mates. If ever I hear mates have been killed or banished for who they are mated to, the punishment will be banishment and the alpha of the pack will face severe consequence. Abuse and bullying in pack will not be tolerated, therefore each and every pack will get one trained royal guard that will inform us of any abuse. The pack will be banished and split up. As for mates, from now on if a mate gets rejected, male or female, they will be welcomed here if they can't stay in their packs. A formal introduction has been made when each and every one of you arrived, so there is no need for that again. Tomorrow evening the formal gathering will start at 6 and end at 8, then our daughter's birthday celebration will take place for the rest of the evening. Tomorrow more packs will be arriving, so the palace will get a little crowded. As for manners, I expect all of you to be well behaved. Any fight and you will be removed and sent home. I said good night and dismissed everyone. That was just a rundown of the changes we are making. Everyone made their way out of the dining hall except for Roland's group. We waited until everyone left and the doors closed again. So from the dead you became a queen, Roland said, and as much as I will like to rip that smugness of his face, I just smiled. I have become a lot of things, Roland. As for you, well, I heard that most of your pack left because you became ruthless and careless, I said, and watched him clench his jaw. Why didn't you ever come back? I heard Tony ask in a low voice. Because my own family killed me and scarred me. Scars I look at every time I take a shower, scars that remind me of how much I was hated and how badly I was treated, I said, and for once I could talk about it without crying or getting angry. Tony looked up at me with guilt and pain in his eyes. I never wanted to. I was told that you killed our parents, and even then I didn't believe it until I saw your eyes change the one day while you were in the dungeon, and it all made sense. Tony said, his expression changing to one of hatred. It doesn't matter, it's in the past. I should thank you all, because if it wasn't for what you did I would have never found my second mate, nor would I have ever met my father. So I forgive you, but you will never be a part of my life or my daughter's. You will be treated exactly the same as every other pack, and you will address us with respect. If you can't do that, then please feel free to leave, I said, and got up from my chair, looking between the shock faces before me. We are family, Natasha said, tears forming in her eyes. No, we were never family and we never will be. I have my family, I said, and walked towards the door. I hope you enjoy your stay and have a good night, I said, and left the dining hall. Julian took my one hand and Zanian my other, and we walked to our room past the stairs. Sandy POV. Ever since I met Crystal and them, I have truly felt like I belong somewhere, and I will forever be grateful to them for saving me from my sad life. I have never been the popular girl in the pack and I was always being teased and made fun of because of my eyes, and when my parents never came back I was the orphan girl. And I was excluded from everything. I went to school only because I worked for the pack, so the Queen Eliza agreed on paying my school fees and buying the things I need as long as I keep working for the pack and do as I'm told. That has been my life since I was 10 years old. I never thought much about finding my mate because I know he will reject me the minute he sees me, so I always kept to myself. I'm not that bad looking, I mean I could maybe lose a few centimeters around my hips, and on the other hand I don't want to because I love the way my body is built. I can still put on a bikini and go for modeling if I wish to. I'm slim but I have curves in the right places. I have a flawless light caramel skin which fits me perfectly. I have brown hair that looks faded from being in the sun too much, and I am not complaining because it goes with my skin perfectly. My eyes on the other hand has always drawn attention. One is light green and the other dark green. I have no problem because my eyes are what make me unique, and it is also the reason I got teased so much. I have had dreams about meeting my mate for the last few days, and I would give anything in the world if that dream could come true. I'm currently in the kitchen helping Maggie get everything ready. I love working with Maggie and everything she is teaching me is unbelievable. I didn't even know you can do so many things with food. I understand now why Crystal is so addicted to the desserts, and I just hope that she would leave some for everyone. So how excited are you? You might find your mate tonight? Maggie asked me with a smile on her face. I am excited, but also scared. What if he doesn't want me? I said, looking down at my hands. Maggie walked closer to me and laid her hands on my shoulders. You will not think such things. You know I was also an outcast of my former pack, and I never thought that I would get a mate until I found him. It took one look and I was in love. Many sentences in this chapter have been removed because you are not reading them on JOBNIB. COM. All my insecurities died the minute he put his arms around me and claimed me as his. Maggie stared off into space, and I want to ask, but it is none of my business, but I need to know. What happened to him? I asked in a sad voice. His parents never accepted me, so they framed me for a murder and he took the fall for it. When they killed him I ran and I never looked back. A few years later I met Zanian and I joined his pack. So you know Zanian and Crystal for a long time? I asked, hoping to ask Maggie something. I know Zanian for a long time. As for Crystal, well, when she first came to the pack she was arrogant and everyone was scared of her, even Zanian. I mean, she did break his ribs with her legs only and she beat him in a challenge twice. But when she left I have never seen Zanian that broken. I frowned and looked at Maggie. Zanian didn't accept Crystal as his mate right away. Instead he made her life a living hell, if I can put it like that. When Zanian was in the hospital fighting for his life, Crystal took care of everyone and she kept everyone safe, and when Zanian woke up he accused her without even saying thank you. And when Crystal saw Natalie clinging to Zanian she lost control, and right after she blackmailed Zanian into marking her she left. I never agreed with that method, but it worked because every day that passed he got weaker and weaker and he realized he cannot be without his mate, so he changed his ways and they are now the happiest couple I have ever seen. I looked at Maggie in awe as I wished I could have been there. I would have loved to see Crystal can turn into. Maggie, can I ask you something? I asked, a bit uncertain. Sure honey, what is it? Would you help me get ready for my birthday? I asked Maggie. I know I can ask Crystal, but she is still queen and her aura sometimes makes me uncomfortable, and I like Maggie. Maggie looked at me and I swear I saw her eyes tear up. She nodded her head and said, I would love to help you. As soon as Martha came in, Maggie told her what still needs to be done and that she would be back later, and then she took my hand and dragged me out of the kitchen. Later that evening, after I showered and dressed, I was standing in front of my full-length mirror admiring the work of Maggie. I think she is in the wrong profession. Seeing that it's formal and informal, Maggie decided on an off-white gown to which she made some alterations. She cut some of the material off so that the dress reaches just below my ankles, and she cut a slit on the left from the bottom to mid-thigh. The dress is strapless with a pearl outline. She did my hair in a tight yet loose bun with a few strands hanging loose, and my makeup is almost the same color as the dress, just with a bit of extra glitter. Maggie came back with a shoe box in hand and said, "These were given to me by my mother and I would love for you to wear them." Maggie opened the box and I gasped at the shoes. It is off-white heels with open toes and lots of straps. "Maggie, I can't take this," I said and closed the box. "Yes you can, and you will, because you are like my daughter too," Maggie said and took the shoes out of the box. I took a seat on the bed and Maggie put the shoes on. "See, and it's a perfect fur too," Maggie said and held out her hand for me to take. I took her hand and I tried not to cry because the makeup will smudge. Seeing that it's almost 8 and the formal gathering will soon end, Maggie had to leave and get the things ready for the teenagers, she said. I waited until I heard a soft knock on the door. "Sandy honey, can I come in?" I heard Crystal's voice on the other side. I took a deep breath and walked to the door, opening it so that Crystal can come in. When she looked at me she gasped and I covered her mouth, staring at me with wide eyes. "Is it too much?" I asked, rubbing my hands down the dress, staring at Crystal anxiously. "You look absolutely beautiful," Crystal said and smiled brightly at me. I smiled at her and saw that she is wearing a baby blue gown with a white ribbon hanging from her sides. "And you look very pretty in blue," I said and hugged her. "You ready to go?" Crystal asked when we heard the music starting from downstairs. I nodded my head and took a deep breath. As we descended the stairs, a lot of heads turned our way and I could see admiration and jealousy in their eyes. There are mostly young wolves left in the palace and the grown-ups moved to the gardens where it's a bit quieter. I received some wish-filled stares from numerous guys, but I only have one thing in mind, and that is finding my mate. I could hear whispers and I could feel stares as I walked to the backyard with Crystal still following me. "Happy birthday!" A lot of people shouted, scaring out of me. I actually jumped. Crystal burst out laughing and put her arm around my shoulder, pulling me closer to her side and walking with me towards a table with a cake as big as me stood. I looked at the cake and my jaw dropped. It looks so beautiful I almost don't want anyone to cut it. It looks almost like a wedding cake, just more colorful with a sweet 16 at the top, and I guess there are 16 candles as well by the looks of the small flickering flames. I looked around me and thanked everyone. I walked over to blow out the candles and the most amazing scent caught my nose, and it has nothing to do with cake. This kind of scent smells like coconut and mint. I sniffed the air and looked around. My eyes finally landed on the source of the smell and I couldn't stop staring. A guy was standing at one side of the crowd with his back to us, looking towards the training field. He isn't as muscular as most of the guys here. He is slim with dark hair, dressed in casual blue jeans and a black shirt. I forgot all about the cake and made my way over to him. His posture looks so sad, almost like he is longing. As I got closer he finally noticed and sniffed the air. Why didn't he notice sooner? I wonder as I stopped behind him just as he spun around. I came face to face with a boy who looks like has been through a rough week. He has small dark circles under his beautiful big baby blue eyes and his skin is a bit pale. His eyes widened in surprise and he bowed immediately. I giggled at his actions and he sniffed the air once again as if just realizing. He looked me in the eye and all I could see was sadness. My heart tightened at the sight and I had the urge to know what and who made him sad. "Don't worry, I won't want me either," he said with a small sad smile. I looked at him confused for a second and asked, "What do you mean?" "Please, if you are going to reject me, just do it. It wouldn't be the first time," he said and looked me in the eyes. My heart broke just by what he just said, and I'm pretty sure my face said it all. For once in my life I'm just going to do what I have never done before. I took a step closer to him and laid my hands on either side of his face, and I smashed my lips against his. I have never kissed anyone before, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I felt him stiffen and I didn't pull away, instead I waited for him to respond. He put his hands around my waist and pulled me close against him, and this time he started the kiss. Crystal POV. I woke up this morning with dread looming over my body. Last night's conversation with Natasha and them were a lot harder than I would have ever imagined, and it drained me emotionally. Never in a million years would I have imagined that they would throw the "we are family" card my way, but I guess power really does make someone do crazy things. When I came to bed after tucking the girls in, each having a bunny in their bed, I couldn't pretend anymore and a tear fell from my eye rolling down my cheek. When I needed them the most they broke me, and now that I have finally gotten somewhere having my life all figured out, now they want to just barge back in. I groaned and moved my body only to stop when both arms around me tightened, leaving me to gasp for breath. I slapped their arms trying to wake them or at least loosen their grip, but they were out like logs. "Guys, I can't breathe," I said, making a choking noise, and the both let go and their eyes snapped open. I looked between them and they both had guilty expressions on their faces. "Come on. Time to wake up, we have guests arriving," I said, and jumped over Zanian before he could catch me. His reflexes are a bit slower than Julian's, that is why I jump over him. I took a nice hot shower and got dressed in a baby blue gown with a white ribbon hanging from my sides with blue heels. I did my hair up and put minimal makeup. I walked out of the closet and found Zanian and Julian tying their shoes. They are both dressed in formal tuxes with a blue tie to match my dress. I don't know why, but they went out and bought the same color ties as each of my dresses. I laughed when they showed me the madness of how they can be. And before you ask, yes, they did shower. There are 2 built-in bathrooms in our room, one for them and one for me, seeing as I am the only girl. The real reason being they use all hot water and then I have to have cold water, so Elle complained, and now they switched bathrooms. We made our way down the stairs and saw that not many wolves are awake. Well, it is only 6:30 and breakfast will only be served at 7, so I greeted the ones we did see and moved to the dining room. The room was still empty while the Omegas that chose to keep their roles set the table and bring out most of the breakfast things. I smiled at them and they did the same, greeting us formally after we said that there is no need to be so formal, but they never lose their formalities. Loud talking and whispered talking filled the dining room as everyone made their way to an open seat. I made sure to put Tyler and Chris on either side of Zanian and Julian so that Natasha won't have a chance to sit in my face, and I was right to do so because when I saw her enter she was making her way over here until she saw that their seat have been taken. "So how do you find living with 2 beasts?" Tyler asked in a mocking tone, winking at me. "Well, we can't call them beast, they at least have a bit more class," I said and leaned close to Tyler's ear. "And they found a new way of eating dessert," I said and smirked when Zanian covered his face with his hands. "Please, not while we eat," Julian said with his hand on my thigh, moving higher and higher. I cleared my throat and stood up. "Good morning everyone, I hope you all a pleasant evening. After breakfast we will have a walk. Ladies, you will all be with me and the men will go with Julian and Zanian. We just want to show you the progress we're making and the changes that will happen within the next few months." I smiled at everyone and caught sight of Natasha glaring at me. I smiled at her and sat back down. We enjoyed a full breakfast and everyone carried on with their own conversations. I felt holes being stared into the side of my head and honestly didn't care. After we were done I gathered the ladies and everyone wanted to talk to me or be in my presence, so I tried giving everyone a minute or two, and if it isn't important I would divert my attention to something that is. I showed them around to everything that is happening and the new house we are building that will be an orphanage for unwanted babies. We were standing in front of the house when I saw a young Luna looking down at her stomach with sadness in her eyes. I dismissed everyone and walked up to the young girl asking her for a minute. When she saw me she lowered her head and I waited for everyone to be out of sight and hearing range. I put my hand on her shoulder and she looked up at me. "What is the matter?" I asked, looking at her, hiding my aura so that she doesn't feel intimidated. When I looked at her, tears welled up in her eyes and she cried silently. "I don't want this baby," she said, and I took a step back from her. "Why not?" asked, a bit too aggressive. "Because it belongs to him," she said and wiped her tears. "What are you talking about?" I asked in a softer voice. "He doesn't want me, he just wants an heir that could take over the madness he created," the girl said, and I looked at her questioningly. "Who is he and what do you mean madness?" I asked, rubbing her back so she can calm down. "Alpha Arwen is the one that has been attacking the weaker, smaller pack so he can take their land because he wants to expand," the girl said and clasped her hands over her mouth the minute she said it. "I'm sorry," she said and lowered her head. "It's okay, what is your name?" I asked, looking at her and knowing she will be in trouble if he finds out. She told me. "My name is Amber Gold and I'm the Luna of the Blue River Pack," she said and immediately lowered her head. "Okay Amber, this is what we are going to do. We are going to pretend that you didn't say anything and I don't know anything. Tomorrow at the meeting we will sort this once and for all, and if you don't want your baby you are welcome to bring him or her here, but if you decide to keep your baby you will have to promise to be the best mother you can possibly be," I said, looking at her with sympathy and sincerity. "My heart goes out to her because I know what it feels like to be afraid of your mate." The morning went by fast and by the time we got back it was already close to 3 in the afternoon. All the other packs have arrived and everyone is settled and now it is just the evening that I want to get over and done with. Everyone left to their rooms to get ready for the evening. I found Hazel and Isabella and spent some time with them, and they still have the bunnies and they multiplied. There is about 7 bunnies in their room now and it looks like they are having fun. I sat with them until just before 5 and then I left to go and get ready. Zanian and Julian was sprawled out on the bed looking like they had a rough day when instead they only had half a tough day. "This is madness," Zanian said, not even trying to sit up. "Well, it's not over yet," I said and walked into the bathroom getting ready to take a shower. "Can we join you?" Julian asked, pouting like a small child. I weighed the pros and cons on them joining me and by the look on their faces it was hard to say no. "Okay, you have 5 minutes," I said, and they both jumped off the bed and started undressing as they walk. After our shower we only had 30 minutes to get ready so we did at lightning speed. Zanian and Julian made me wear the same blue dress saying it brings out the color of my eyes, and being me I could reject their request so I put the dress on with new makeup and did my hair differently. We made our way out of our room and down to the ballroom. The formal introductions went well, every pack stated their names and the name of their pack and where they are located. I was surprised to see a female alpha of the pack Bloodstone. Even growing up we heard about that pack and never even tried to get on their bad side, for they are the second strongest pack in the country. Finally I met with Arwen face to face and just by looking at him it feels like I can feed it to him. I glared at him, making him a bit uncomfortable before I said, "Well, that is everyone. You all already know us, and now if you will excuse me, I have a birthday to plan," said, and looked at Amber and asked her to accompany me, and seeing the shock on everyone's faces made me glare at all of them and it caused everyone to bow their heads. Amber and I got everything ready for Sandy and I already know that she is getting ready and that Maggie is helping her. We put the cake in the backyard so together with all the gifts everyone brought knowing about the birthday. We did say they don't need to bring anything, but they wouldn't listen, so here I am standing stacking gifts like they are never ending. When I was done I walked up to go and find Sandy. When I saw her, her beauty knocked the wind out of me. Maggie is definitely in the wrong profession, I thought, staring open-mouthed at Sandy. I could feel her nervousness through our link, so I squeezed her hand and glared at the males who stared at her with wish in their eyes. Knowing about her goal, I almost feel sorry for the males she is ignoring. I could barely keep my excitement under control while leading her to the backyard. Everyone shouted happy birthday, and she literally jumped from the fright she got. I couldn't help but laugh because her mind is a million miles away from here. She walked up to the cake and stopped dead, sniffing the air and looking around. I crossed my fingers behind my back, and so did everyone else who saw me do it. Zanian wanted to step closer to her, but I caught his arm and held him back. We stood and watched as her eyes landed on a lonely boy staring out in space. I could feel her happiness through the bond and willed her to go to him, seeing that he didn't even notice her or the smell. As she walked up to him, I could feel sadness, and when he turned to look at her, I was ready to give him a piece of my mind for making my girl sad, but I was stopped dead in my tracks when Sandy did something I never thought she would be capable of. She kissed him. Yes, she kissed him. He made her sad and she kissed him. The wonders of a mate, I thought to myself as I leaned into Zanian with Julian hugging me from behind. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.